Hello and welcome to Only Facts. So we're on to that cretin Piers Morgan. I mean, look, his show he does on YouTube's good because of the guests, not because of him, right? But I believe he shut the book at Robinson. One, Robinson destroyed him on Good Morning Britain in 2000, let's say 2018, something like that, when the Grenfell Tower happened. Around that time, he absolutely ripped Piers Morgan to shreds and showed the level of intelligence that Tommy's got compared to Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan's not stupid. Tommy he's just different stratosphere, mate. Piers Morgan's, but Tommy Robinson is a convicted football hooligan. I understand why people in America have a slightly warped view of him, but I can tell you that this is reality. Yeah, mate, you're fighting a losing battle. You might have a few lefties here backing you up, but I know Vinny's on the show from the PBD podcast, Patrick Pat Davis podcast. I bet he's got Tommy's back here.
Pointing out atrocities by a certain group of people doesn't make you racist. Brought from Malone, there were estimated 1,400 children were subjected to abuse between the 80s and 2013. Why is it covered up?
Tommy Robinson has been deliberately amplified as a kind of hate figure. Why is Elon getting involved now? He's not wrong. And actually, this scandal, I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg.
Elon is not even in it just for himself. He is a shill of the Chinese Communist Party.
I'm going to commend the right wing for having a civil war. You're supposed to disagree.
Yes.
You're not supposed to be robots. That means that they're thinking for themselves.
Hillary Clinton and George Soros got the Medal of Freedom, and I can't believe it. That is so ridiculous. That's like giving Jeffrey Dahmer a Michelin star for outstanding diversity in cuisine. I still can't believe it. It is what it is.
Well, Happy New Year. It's fair to say that a lot has happened in the brief interlude since our last big show. And Elon Musk has found himself somewhere near pretty much all of it. He's currently calling on King Charles to dissolve Parliament in Britain. And he wants the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer jailed. He also threw Nigel Farage under a big red bus, saying he should no longer be a leader of reform. And he's turned the UK grooming scandal into a massive global story. We'll have a lot to say about that one over the next few days, but it was a pro-immigration take that put Musk at loggerheads with MAGA Puritans. Does the US economy need the brightest and best from around the world, or does America first mean no exceptions? We'll debate that. The US has also been rocked by two terror attacks, one using a Cybertruck outside a Trump hotel. It's weeks before Trump's inauguration. Is America safe? And in an act of trolling that Musk himself might be proud of, President Biden doled out honours to Hillary Clinton, George Soros and Bono. We'll debate all that as well and more, but we begin with a massive breaking story. The Prince of Woke himself, the purveyor of people kind, Justin Trudeau, has just announced he is quitting as the Prime Minister of Canada. Well, I'm joined now by the CEO and founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, the opinion editor of Newsweek and the author of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women, Batia Ungar Itagon, and the host of Gains for Girls on Outkick, Riley Gaines, and Vinny Oshana from the PBD podcast. Welcome to all of you and a very happy new year. A lot going on, obviously. Cenk, let's start with you with this breaking news that Justin Trudeau is to quit. And this comes after a collapse in his popularity. It also comes, of course, in a period of the last 2 years where pretty much every liberal, woke, left-wing leader in the world has been kicked out of office. What do you make of it?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of strong opinions about Justin Trudeau or Canada, but I do about the very last thing you said. It's not that the woke are being kicked out of office. Very progressive leaders elected in Mexico, Brazil, and other places. It's that insiders are being kicked out of office. If you're an incumbent, God help you, because the world wants change. They hate the status quo and the corporate rule that we live under, so they're constantly looking for new leadership. That's why they keep swinging wildly left to right, left to right. It's because they're looking for populism, and they're not getting it from the establishment.
Okay, Vinny, I'm not as convinced as Cenk that that's the only reason. Justin Trudeau was about as woke as you could possibly get. I think we got a clip of him where a student tries to use the word mankind and Trudeau interrupts. Let's take a look.
Unfortunately, in Canada, our volunteering as a charitable religious organization is extremely difficult. Extremely. That's why, in actuality, we cannot do free volunteering to help our neighbors in need as we truly desire. So that's why we came here today to ask you to also look into the policies that religious charitable organizations have in our legislation so that it can also be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look into
we
that.
would like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Actually, we can't, can we, Vinny? Because the last thing I want to learn is that we can't use mankind. Can you imagine if we have to refilm Neil Armstrong landing on the moon? One small step for a person, one giant leap for peoplekind, etc. Bullshit. That's why one of the reasons I think he's gone is that this woke nonsense, people are sick and tired of it. It's why Trump won big. Yes, because of the immigration crisis. Yes, because of cost of living crisis. But also because people are sick of this crap.
Come Friday.
I agree, Piers. First of all, Happy New Year's, Piers, and thank you for always having me on. I appreciate you more than you know. Yeah, Piers, it's like the proof is in the pudding. Piers, people are just freaking done. I'm on an app called Connect that Pat created a while ago where people could connect with professionals. I cannot tell you how many Canadians I get. I'm talking about in the hundreds, Piers, that have been complaining about this guy for years. Just, he's horrible, he's woke, the policies. It's like, you have to worry about the country first, put the people first, talking about the mankind to that girl. I think it's just another example of enough is enough. The people have finally spoken. They are tired of it, and they're moving on from people like Justin Trudeau. And I think it's a huge plus for Canadians and on the global scale as well.
Yeah, I mean, Batty, apparently the popularity collapse was because of record inflation, an acute housing crisis, high food prices, voter fatigue, as Cenk said, with incumbent politicians. But recent polling had his Liberal Party at 16% support, the worst pre-election standing in more than a century, and they have an election coming. So no surprise, really, that he's gone. But how much do you think there is a pattern here, not just of incumbents getting a shellacking, but also this... Look, I don't like to use woke without explaining what I mean has happened to it, because I wrote a whole book about this called Wake Up 3 years ago. Woke was, in its original incarnation, a great thing. It was to make people more aware of social and racial injustice. By that criteria, I'm woke. But it's been hijacked. And as somebody who's always in my head thought I'm more liberal than not, it got hijacked to an extent where I just felt I had nothing in common with these people. You know, the whole trans debate of trans women in sport and so on. And I think we saw that in the election result in America. I think we're seeing it in Trudeau getting kicked out. What do you feel here? Am I right? Is this part of the reason why so many of the progressive left are getting thrown out?
When I first started Eve, I was a minor, and I was really tired of getting blown up by people all the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Protect our freedoms. So to highlight climate change and funding for Ukraine, I mean, I think largely this is a huge reason as to why he was ousted.
Well, let's turn to probably the biggest story of the last month, Cenk, which is Elon Musk, who is putting himself at the center of pretty much every debate now, not just in America, but here in the UK. He's been on the assault all week on tweet storm after tweet storm, demanding the Prime Minister be jailed, hammering a previous Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, as well, calling for the King, Charles III, to dissolve Parliament, which he can't actually do. Some of it is ill-informed, like the example I just gave, but some of it, his attack about the grooming gangs, the rape gang scandal, which has engulfed Britain now for many years, I think he's got a point, and he's certainly inflaming the debate to a point where there may be urgent national inquiry into what actually happened here, which is long overdue. But Elon Musk, he's gone from being this
the grooming gang scandal to the mainstream. Without Tommy Robinson, it would have just been hidden. And we still wouldn't know the depths of these crimes without Tommy. Never forget that.
Billionaire genius who does a range of amazing things. So now he's Trump's right-hand guy. He's unelected, and he's now wanting to directly immerse himself into the politics of other countries. We saw it in Germany last week. We're seeing it in the UK now and so on. Is this a good thing for Elon Musk, for Donald Trump? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think Elon Musk is a complicated character. So people can be smart in some ways and not so informed in other ways. And he might know how to run SpaceX and Starlink really well. But we've seen his flaws. We saw he way overpaid for Twitter. But I think that one of the things that he discovered, Piers, is, oh my God, I paid $44 billion for an amplifier in the form of Twitter, now X. But for $250 million, I bought the U.S. government because he gave a little over $250 million to Donald Trump. And now, he's in charge of all of the spending in the United States with his, so-called Doge thing, which is not a thing, really. It's made up by Donald Trump. It's just a way of giving his biggest donor the American government. And so Elon Musk is doing something that's rational now. He's going around seeing how many governments can he purchase, bully, intimidate, and do propaganda against and get his way. And in a sense, he's A/B testing. I could see it as a person who runs a digital media company. He's putting out messages against the left, the right, the middle, every way you can, and seeing what reaction he gets back. And based on the reaction, he then doubles down in one direction and then retracts in another direction. Remember, he originally was against Donald Trump. And after A/B testing on X, he decided to be for Donald Trump. So does he really have an ideology? No, not really. His ideology is what makes Elon Musk richer. So I think that if you're on the right, you've got to be concerned that you've got an out-of-control donor here who is kind of taking over the U.S. government and looking to take over more governments.
Right. I mean, you make the point he paid $44 billion for Twitter, now X, but it's estimated he's made $100 billion from a surge in the stock price of Tesla off the back of Trump's win. And he helped Trump win by promoting him so aggressively on X. So you could see there that just as a straight bet on Trump, he has more than made double his money back on the investment on X through his stock in Tesla. So it's an interesting game that Elon is playing. I mean, Vinny, I think Elon's a genius, but he has that Trump-like very thin skin. We saw it with the extraordinary confrontation with Nigel Farage, who was posting pictures of the two of them at Mar-a-Lago only 3 weeks ago, like they were best buddies. And there were reports that Elon may put £100 million into Farage's Reform Party in the UK, which is the most right-wing party, fledgling but growing in momentum and support. And now suddenly out of nowhere, because he won't support this character, Tommy Robinson, who, by the way, I think Elon is wrong to support, because he said that, Elon has immediately turned on him and said, right, in that case, he's the wrong guy to run Reform. Do you feel comfortable with all this stuff that Elon's doing?
Well, Piers, just to go back to what Cenk was talking about, let's talk about other billionaires who donated to the Biden administration, the $200 million Zuckerbucks, the Soroses, the Bezoses. Listen, he spent $40-some billion so that people like me and people like you can speak freely about these problems. Okay, and I think what he's doing, and I respect you, Piers. The Tommy Robinson thing. People have mixed emotions. Pointing out atrocities by a certain group of people doesn't make you racist. I have a little fact. So in Rotherham, and you know this, Rotherham alone, there were estimated 1,400 children were subjected to abuse between the 80s and 2013. 1,400. And why is it covered up? What's the purpose of hiding it? Because you don't want to say that the certain groups were Pakistani Muslim men. We have to say what it is.
Well, that is what happened. I mean, that is exactly what happened. There was a massive cover-up. It wasn't a cover-up by the mainstream media, though. To be accurate about this, It was the Times newspaper in the UK who burst the story. They exposed it originally at the start of 2011. Tommy Robinson then latched onto it, and he's not been wrong about the rape gangs at all. The problem is, I think in America, there is a belief amongst many Americans, the conservatives I've seen talking about this, that Tommy Robinson is currently in a British prison because he exposed the rape gangs. It's got nothing to do with why he's in prison. He's in prison for brazenly and repeatedly being in contempt of court over a young Syrian refugee boy who was bullied at school and lying about him.
Silenced, you know that he was the bully. The Syrian refugee was the bully. He wasn't being bullied. He was bullied, and someone reacted to him being bullied and just dragged him to the floor and doused him with water. Chucked a bit of water on him and they were waterboarding him, apparently. What a load of crap. This guy is just repeating utter mainstream media bollocks.
So I just think it's important that Americans, when they debate this, understand there are two different things here. One, Tommy Robinson and why he's in prison. But secondly, that Tommy Robinson, along with many other people, has been absolutely right about the rape gangs.
Okay, Pierre, but let me ask you a question.
By the way, I agree that we shouldn't be too politically correct. Let's blame all the Catholic priests for monstrous abuse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's not spare the Catholics and their leadership and their grotesque child abuse decade after decade, century after century. So let's blame the Catholic priests most of all. And then move on.
I agree.
Well, yeah, but the Catholic priests have nothing to do with it. Look, the scandal in Britain, the grooming scandal or rape scandal is what we should be calling it, because these girls were raped, and tens of thousands may have been victims here. It was horrendous. And the people who were perpetrating this were almost exclusively British Pakistani Muslims, right? And so that has been the issue that was covered up. People from council level to police to other authorities to governments, they were not prepared to get properly into this scandal because they were terrified of the feedback and the bounce back and blowback they may get if they said who was actually doing this. Vinny.
Okay, so Pierce, great point, Pierce. So these poor girls were raped and abused for all those years, but because you couldn't say that these guys were Muslim, everybody turned the cheek because of people's feelings. That's absolutely nonsense. And I saw Tommy Robinson's documentary Silence, and if anybody has watched it, you can't find it on YouTube, it's on X. He goes undercover and questions all the people in that school of that Syrian kid, and all of the majority of them said that that kid was a bully, he was mean,
but hang on, okay, but here's the point. Okay, but Vinny, let me stop you. Yes, he does. I've watched Silence. I'm in it. He has a go at me, which is fine, because I was on Good Morning Britain at the time talking about this. Here's the problem. He repeats in the film a series of things which are lies.
I never join a meeting without my AI meeting assistant to take notes.
Watch this.
See,
I can ask Otter.
That's why he's been...
He's obviously prepared himself for an answer here. And this is what has got up Morgan. This has really affected Piers Morgan, I could tell. Vinny has nailed him.
Found in contempt of court, and that's why he's been put in prison. And the reason we know he's lying is that he was sued by the Syrian refugee in a court, and a judge, in a very lengthy verdict and conclusion, which I read in full, and I recommend, by the way, that you and everybody else watching this goes away and takes the time to read the full judgment from the judge. All 5 of the witnesses that Robinson produced in court were discredited by the judge. He said they're not credible. He said a lot of them are making stuff up completely. The attempt by Robinson to portray the Syrian refugee boy as the villain, not the victim, was a lie. The boy who was accused of bullying him was thrown out of the school because of his previous prior record and this incident before it ever got made public, this incident, which came through a viral video. So, yeah, people in America do look at Tommy Robinson in a very different way to how we do here. The reason Nigel Farage has disowned him...
Tommy Robinson is absolutely adored in this country, people. Remember that.
nothing to do with him is we see through him. Right? Tommy Robinson is a convicted football hooligan who was convicted of beating up a police officer, leading a riot. He is somebody who's been guilty of mortgage fraud. He's been somebody who was guilty of forging a passport to get into America because he couldn't travel because of his criminal record. He's been found in contempt of court twice for nearly wrecking trials of the grooming gangs, where he turned up and was saying defamatory things at the courtroom, which nearly led to the whole case being collapsed. And
it's not actually true, because I watched it live. All he was just reporting from outside the court, and then a riot van turned up, sent him to jail. Didn't even allow him to speak to his solicitor. They locked him in a room, not a cell, for 2 hours. His solicitor turns up. Where's Tommy? I need to speak to him. Don't know where he is, but they did know where he was. They were hiding him. Kangaroo courted him. You know what a kangaroo court is? No. Tommy's never faced a jury. It's just been a judge. And the establishment hate him in this country. That's why. Everything Morgan has said there, some things are true, but a lot of it is just corruption.
And now he's been found in contempt of court for repeating lies about this Syrian boy in this film Silence, which has been viewed over 150 million times.
Sorry, people,
I understand why people in America have got a slightly warped view of Robinson, but I can tell you that is the reality. And so it changes things when you know the reality.
No, it doesn't. Because I know the reality.
Can I jump in here for a minute, Piers?
Yeah, you can. I'll bring in Betty. Cenk has left us to switch his camera. He's having problems with his camera. He will be back. He hasn't fled in disgust. So, yeah, Betty, on this point.
I think it's very important that we ask, why are Americans talking about this 10-year-old case all of a sudden with so much vigor and so much interest? And the answer is because, as you led with, Piers, Elon Musk decided that this was going to be his cause du jour. And the reason that he decided that, it seems to me, is to distract from the massive debate that he launched about H-1B visas when he sided with foreign workers over American workers, and the fact that in response to criticism, he has begun censoring people on Twitter in exactly the same way that conservatives used to be censored on Twitter under the old regime. And in order to change the subject, he has decided to talk about this decade-old case in Britain and take up this character. And you are...
It's not about a decade-old case. The guy is in prison right now, you silly woman.
Right, you're both right. It's not Islamophobic for people in England to debate this. But you know what I will not stand for? What will make somebody my enemy is if people in America decide to talk about our Muslim neighbors and friends and co-Americans who have nothing to do with this, and because a billionaire is throwing a tantrum and trying to change the subject, will suddenly start talking about people in a totally different country in a way that makes my neighbors feel uncomfortable, my neighbors feel unsafe in America. And I think that's a really important point to make.
Yeah, I do. I think it is a good point. I also think that Tommy Robinson has been deliberately amplified as a kind of hate figure by those who have a lot to hide in this scandal, because it suits them, because he is so discredited that he's the front man for this whole scandal, when in fact there is a genuine scandal that's been going on for many years. I mean, you may say, well, why is Elon getting involved now? I agree. However, he's not wrong. And actually, this scandal, I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg of accountability. Not a single person in authority who was part of the cover-up has been held properly account or been put in prison. That is a disgrace. Riley, how do you feel about Elon Musk? I mean, he's a complex character. I've met him. He's a genius. He's very thin-skinned, but he's brilliant, and he can be terrible, right? I mean, he can be all those things.
Yeah, that's right, Piers. Here, really quickly, let me just address what is going on with this grooming case, or as you said, this horrific, I mean, that's to put it mildly, really, gang raping situation that has been going on in the UK. Just because it's been happening for over a decade does not make it any less I guess, condemnable. And so I appreciate his efforts. I appreciate how he has drawn attention to this. As you know, Piers, I'm married to a Brit. He came over to the United States about 6 years ago. We've been married for just about 3 years now. Even being married 3 years, he does not have his green card. There's no even talks of getting his green card because he will not get the COVID vaccine, but that's a different conversation. But what the UK has done is, I think they've proven they're more interested in prosecuting you for a Facebook post that they don't like than a group of Pakistani men for gang raping 1,400 young girls in one city. Again, the reports, the excerpts of the transcripts of the trial are sickening and literally made me feel sick to my stomach. I probably couldn't even repeat this stuff on your program. But here's what I'll say about Elon, to answer your question. What I appreciate about him is he says his stuff openly. There's transparency, there's accountability. That's very different than the other billionaires that were mentioned, like Gates and BlackRock and Soros, who do all of their stuff behind the scenes, behind closed doors, and they cannot be held to account. So if we're talking about who we trust here, I'm trusting Elon 10 days out of 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, Cenk, I think that is a valid point. Elon Musk does it all right out there. He's on his own platform. He's telling you exactly what he thinks. He's not always right. And he's very inflammatory. I mean, he said some things about some of the British politicians which are truly shocking. And you could argue they're quite dangerous. He's gone after one called Jess Phillips in particular, who he's called evil and should be in prison, almost holding her single-handedly accountable for all this, called her a rape genocide apologist. But the problem I have with that is it's not accurate, for one. She's not a rape genocide apologist. But more importantly, 2 British members of parliament have been murdered in the last 10, 11 years, including a young female member of parliament. We don't want to have a situation where inflammatory rhetoric, amplified to the extent that Elon's X feed is obviously huge. All these things get gazillions of views. We don't want to have members of parliament or members of Congress or anybody else actually having their lives threatened, as she has now had since this tweet, apparently, this post, having her life threatened in a country where 2 members of parliament in the last 10 years have been murdered by people who don't agree with their views.
Right. There's one unifying theme in all the things that we've discussed, and it hasn't been mentioned yet, which is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So why did the Catholic priest scandal take so long to be exposed? Because at the time, Catholic priests had enormous power in the UK, in the US, and all over the world. I think what you guys are trying to point out with this idea that some were a little afraid to point out this Pakistani Muslim gang in northern England is that because minorities had some degree of power where they could challenge people of being racist or bigoted, etc., and it made people a little bit reticent to call them out. Now, the reality is, of course, you should call out wrongdoers, no matter what religion they're in, whether it's Catholics, Muslims, or any other thing. But it also connects to Elon Musk, because now he has a lot of power, bordering on absolute power. And how is he abusing that? Well, number one, by making wild charges against others, and that's a huge problem. Number two, he's beginning to censor people on X, just like he said was the reason he bought it in the first place, so that he could end that censorship. And you can see a very clear pattern. Whoever criticizes Elon Musk gets censored. So we transfer power from Catholics to minorities, now to gigantic donors. And by the way, to what Vinny complained about, he's right. There's no reason why all these people should be getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom like Soros. And by the way, also Miriam Adelson. Trump gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom because her husband gave over $200 million to Donald Trump in different campaign contributions. We're now giving out these incredible honors as tchotchkes, as little throw-in prizes like Ginsu knives, because the donors run the place, and they're the ones with the most power. And we have to keep in mind, whether it's George Soros on the left or Elon Musk on the right, that at the end of the day, they are donors who are in it for themselves and their own power.
Yeah, I mean, Vinny, I think
And can I just make one more point about that?
Yeah,
just tagging on to what Cenk just said. Elon is not even in it just for himself. He is a shill of the Chinese Communist Party. For all of his masquerading as some sort of maverick who always tells the truth and is always explicit in his views and out there and always says what he thinks, he has never once criticized the CCP. The opposite. He is constantly saying embarrassing, humiliating, bending the knee things about how great the Chinese Communist Party is, because of course his entire supply chain for Tesla is in China. So when they asked him to build a showroom for Tesla in Xinjiang, where the genocide of the Uyghurs is happening, he said, I would love to, and he went ahead and did it. So this is a person who is totally in the pocket of the CCP. To see him as anything else than an actual apparatchik of China is to really miss, I think, the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I think you make some points a lot of people have made. I've seen it on X all day long, actually. Vinny, this whole civil war in the Republican Party over the visa issue, the H-1B visas, where do you sit with that?
Well, Piers, I mean, we've been saying this for the past, I think Patrick Bet-David said it on the PBD podcast, I want to say 6 months ago. He said that the Democrats are going to pin Elon Musk against Donald Trump. They're going to say he's his puppet, he's in charge, he's doing this. The administration hasn't even begun. We still have to wait till the 20th. He's in charge, he's calling the shots. For everybody that knows Donald Trump, including you, Piers, he is a freaking boss among bosses. Okay, I understand the donor situation. We haven't seen anything else. I think everybody needs to relax. I mean, at the end of the day, Piers, think about it. Trump has said positive things about H-1B. I mean, it started in the 90s with Bush Sr. If we think about it, this is just another government program that people are taking advantage of. All these people that are coming out, well, how much is it a year, Piers? I think 85 to 100,000 H-1Bs. Elon's, an H-1B person himself. I mean, but on the flip side, if you're pro-America and you're all for America, all those jobs should be given to Americans. At the end of the day, we see Vivek, he's kind of flip-flopping. If you're America first, American workers should get the jobs first. If they want it changed, change the program. Just like when Trump said, when he was debating Hillary, and Hillary was like, what the taxes and this and that, and Trump takes advantage of it. What did he say? When you guys change the rules, I'll change the game. Okay, but until then,
but how did you feel?
Piers. And again,